Airline operation software. When I joined the company, the airline had a software for selling tickets called Navitaire. But the small airline didn't buy any of the famous operational softwares for airlines like Sabre, because they were too expensive. An office, the Operational Control Center, was centralizing and dispatching all information related to the flights. That office was using an access database for some of the information, but many telephone calls and emails to the country's airports were needed. Let's look at the initial process. The customers would purchase flights using the commercial sales software. The flights were defined in the sales software by the marketing office. A few days before flight departure, staff from the Operational Control Center, or OCC, manually retypes the flight information into the access database. Then, the pilots and flight attendants for each flight are defined in the access database based on spreadsheets from the officer in charge of scheduling the flight duties. The day before the flight, the confirmed duties are sent to the pilots and flight attendants. On top of gathering and dispatching schedule information, the OCC has to dispatch quickly disrupting events such as flight delays, cancellation, and airplane maintenance. My job was to alleviate OCC's tasks. After implementing the software called Flight Operations Tool, or FOT, the modified process was as follows. Customers still buy tickets like before, from flights created like before. But then, scheduled flights from the sales software can be imported in a few clicks without manual data entry in the FOT. The airport stations this time mostly push information to the OCC. And OCC can inform all stations, flying crews, and management by simply updating the FOT software. The bulk of the operational information of the airline is conveyed graphically by a single screen called the floorboard that will be demonstrated in a few seconds. The OCC is now relieved from updating the flight schedule with flying crew names. This is now done directly by the officer in charge of flying crew schedule. The new complex scheduling tool has time-saving and legal compliance benefits that will be demonstrated right after the floorboard. Finally, the daily duties are exported in a single click before being sent to the flying staff. Let's go to the floorboard, the most important screen of the software. We log in, then select floorboard, and then the flights of the day show up. Each airport office and the OCC would have large computer monitors on the wall with this screen displayed all day long and updating itself automatically. On each row, the long rectangles represent flights. The red vertical line shows us where we are in time. Each row represents a plane whose name is in the leftmost square. The wrench tells us some maintenance is required on the plane. Clicking on the plane will show the required maintenance. Let's zoom in to see the details. The numbers are the flight names. The scheduled flight times initially appear in blue, but if they are rescheduled during the day, they will appear orange. Here are the scheduled departure and arrival times, and the booked seats. Below, the gray rectangle represents the actual flight times, and inside of it is written the actual number of passengers. Below the gray rectangle, we see first the actual delay, followed by actual times for closing the door, taking off, landing, and opening the airplane door. For flights that haven't taken off or landed yet, the E shows the estimated departure and arrival times calculated automatically based on minimum ground time required at each airport and the delays of the plane's previous flights. The small blue and red arrows represent vans for taking the flight crew to and from the airports. The three letters between the flights are the airports. Their color reflects weather information. Pink means no weather information available. Green, good weather, means all landing approaches can be performed by eyesight. Orange means at least one landing approach requires the use of cockpit instruments. Red, at least one landing approach is impossible due to the weather. Brown, all approaches impossible. Let's zoom out. By clicking on the flight rectangles, some extra informations about the flight are displayed, including the flight crew names and the fuel load. By clicking on the airport abbreviation, we can see the list of runway approaches and alternative airports in case of problem. Depending on the weather, each landing approach will be either green for visual, orange for instrumental, or red for impossible. Finally, if the plane is down for maintenance, it will also show on the floorboard. Let's have a look at the flight staff scheduling tool now. The period we want to schedule for is selected. The list of flying staff appears in rows and the days in columns. Clicking Edit Flight Duty for a staff, we are shown all flights for the day grouped by plane. We can also add a non-flying duty for the staff, such as standby duty, for pilots who have to stay available in case of emergency replacement, for example. The flight duty is summarized by the number of flights followed by the starting and ending airport. For safety, there are many rules limiting the amount of working hours and flying hours per week, month and year. We can see in red that the schedule of a staff on a day breaks one of the rules regarding rest time. The rest time regulations can be shown in a click for clarifications. The color changes based on the issue severity. Lastly, a word about the architecture. Despite the seemingly complex diagram here, the software runs on a good old three-tier architecture with database, business and presentation layers. More specifically, MVC, Model View Controller architecture. An existing Microsoft SQL Server hosts the FOT database and a daily copy of the sales software database. The business logic is written in Java, running in Tommy Application Server. And the presentation layer is written in XHTML and makes use of several JSF libraries for creating calendar date pickers, tables, and menus.